What happens when a wife trades honest conversation for secret invitations and her husband discovers every lie through a single photo tag? How does a man who quietly saves screenshots and organizes folders respond when his wife's birthday brunch becomes the public stage for legal papers? Can a woman who called her marriage boring survive the moment consequences arrive with witnesses and sunlight? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Thessaly Crow, and I swear I wasn't doing anything wrong. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. The kitchen smelled like coffee and something else, something I couldn't name. Owen stood at the counter, his back to me, scrolling through his phone. I poured myself a cup and tried to sound casual. I told him I was thinking about having a girls' night on Friday. Just Bryn and maybe a few others from work. He looked up and asked which others. I said Nina, probably, and maybe Sarah. He nodded slowly and asked if we had plans for where. I said we'd figure it out, probably just drinks downtown. He went back to his phone. The conversation felt too light, like walking on ice that might crack. I added that I hadn't been out with friends in forever and that I needed it. He said that was fine. Then his phone buzzed on the counter and a calendar alert flashed across the screen. Lakeview, 9:45 a.m. He swiped it away before I could read more. I asked what that was. He said just a meeting. I asked what kind of meeting. He said nothing important, just something he needed to handle. I let it go. At the time, I thought he was being vague about work. I didn't realize he was already building something. Later that morning, Ivy came down for breakfast. She asked if I was going to Aunt Bryn's house on Friday. I said yes, even though I hadn't talked to Bryn about it yet. Owen didn't say anything, but I saw him glance at me from across the table. Ivy asked her father if he was sad. He told her he was just tired. I kissed Ivy on the forehead and told her Daddy worked too much. Owen still didn't respond. He just rinsed his mug and placed it on the far side of the counter, away from mine. 2 mugs, 2 separate corners. I told myself it didn't mean anything. At the office, everything changed. I was halfway through answering emails when a Slack message popped up from Nina. She'd sent a photo of an event flyer. Executive Mixer, Friday night, hosted by Gideon Marr. The photo showed a sleek rooftop venue, people in cocktail attire, mostly men. Nina said it was invite only, and that I should come. She said Gideon had specifically asked if I was available. My pulse jumped. I'd met Gideon at a networking event 3 months ago. He was charming, polished, the kind of person who made you feel like the most interesting person in the room. Owen had met him once and said he seemed performative. I'd defended Gideon, said Owen was judging too quickly. After that, Owen stopped mentioning him. I stared at the flyer. The event was the same night I'd told Owen about girls' night. I could make it work. I just needed to adjust the story slightly. During lunch, I texted Bryn. I asked if Owen called her. Could she say we were hanging out Friday? There was a long pause before she replied. She asked why. I said it was complicated, that I'd explain later. She sent back a question mark, and then, after another pause, said okay, but that I owed her an explanation. I felt a rush of control, like I was managing pieces on a board. I could go to Gideon's event, have the night I wanted, and Owen would never know. It was harmless. It was just networking. Everyone did this. That evening, I came home to find Owen in the guest room. His laptop was open, but the screen went black the moment I stepped into the doorway. I asked what he was working on. He said just organizing files. I asked why he was doing it in the guest room instead of his usual desk. He said the light was better. On the desk sat a folder labeled Household. I'd seen it before, but this time it looked thicker than it should be. I asked what was in it. He said bills and insurance paperwork. I joked that he was turning into an accountant. He smiled faintly and said someone had to keep track. I left him alone and went to the bedroom. I heard faint sounds from the guest room later that night. A printer warming up, the hum of paper feeding through. I told myself he was printing work documents. I didn't think about why he'd be doing that at 11 at night. Before bed, I checked my phone. Gideon had sent a follow-up message asking if I'd confirmed for Friday. I typed yes and sent it before I could second-guess myself. Then I deleted the entire message thread, just in case. I felt a small thrill, the kind I hadn't felt in years. Owen and I had been together for 9 years, married for 7. Somewhere along the way, things had become predictable. Comfortable, yes, but also flat. Gideon represented something different: excitement, validation, the idea that I was still someone people wanted to be around. When I climbed into bed, Owen was still in the guest room. I called out goodnight, and he said it back through the closed door. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering when we'd started sleeping in separate rooms without ever discussing it. The next morning, Owen was already gone when I woke up. His side of the bed hadn't been touched. On the kitchen counter, his mug sat clean and empty, far from mine. I poured coffee and tried not to think about the distance. As I was leaving for work, Owen's phone buzzed on the counter. He'd left it behind, which was unusual. The screen lit up with a text preview from an unknown number. Meeting confirmed. Bring the folder. I stared at it, confused, then dismissed the screen. When Owen came back in from the garage, he saw me near his phone. I said I was just checking the time. He picked up the phone without comment and slipped it into his pocket. I felt oddly defensive, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I said he acted like I couldn't even stand near his stuff. He said I could stand wherever I wanted, that he just didn't want to give me another thing to make a joke about. I asked what that meant. He said nothing and walked away. That day at work, I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about the event on Friday, about what I'd wear, about whether Gideon would notice. Nina stopped by my desk and asked if I was excited. I said I was. She said it was going to be a great night, that these events were where real connections happened. I asked what she meant by real connections. She laughed and said I'd see. Friday arrived faster than I expected. I told Owen that morning I'd be leaving around 7 to meet the girls. He asked where again. I said downtown, probably that wine bar Bryn liked. He nodded and wrote something down on a sticky note. I asked what he was writing. He said just keeping track of plans. I said he didn't need to track my plans. He said he liked to stay organized. That evening, I changed into a dress I'd bought months ago but never worn. It was fitted, elegant, the kind of thing you wore when you wanted to be remembered. Owen saw me in the hallway and asked if that was what I was wearing to drinks with Bryn. I said yes. He said it seemed formal for a casual night. I said Bryn liked nice places. He didn't argue, just looked at me for a long moment before returning to the guest room. When I left, Ivy hugged me and asked when I'd be home. I said not too late. She asked if Daddy was coming too. I said no, this was a girls' night. Owen stood in the doorway watching. As I reached for the door handle, his phone buzzed again. Another calendar reminder. Downtown, 11:20 a.m. I didn't ask about it. I was too focused on leaving before he asked more questions. The drive downtown felt like an escape. I parked a few blocks from the venue and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked good. I felt good. For the first time in months, I felt like someone other than a wife and mother. I felt like myself. When I walked into the rooftop bar, the first thing I noticed was the ratio. 12 men, maybe 3 women, including Nina. The second thing I noticed was Gideon, standing near the bar, effortlessly holding court with a group of executives. He saw me and smiled, and I felt that thrill again. He walked over and said he was glad I came. He said I looked incredible. I thanked him and tried to sound breezy. He asked about my husband. I said Owen was at home with our daughter. Gideon said that sounded stable. I said it was. He said stability was overrated. I laughed, even though part of me knew I shouldn't. Nina appeared with drinks and introduced me to a few people. Everyone seemed successful, polished, connected. I felt energized by the conversations, by the attention. For 2 hours, I forgot about Owen, about the guest room, about the separate mugs on the counter. Then someone took a photo. I didn't think anything of it at the time. People took photos at events like this all the time. But Nina posted it immediately to Instagram, tagging everyone, including me. The location was geotagged. The timestamp was visible. And in the photo, Gideon's arm was draped casually near my waist. I didn't see the post until later. By then, it was too late. I got home a little after midnight. The house was dark except for a light in the kitchen. Owen was sitting at the table with his tablet in front of him. I tried to sound upbeat and asked if he was still awake. He said he was. I said the night had been fun. He asked how Bryn was doing. I said she was good. He asked what wine bar we went to. I said the one near 5th Street. He nodded slowly, then turned the tablet toward me. The screen showed Nina's Instagram post, the photo, the tags, the location. My stomach dropped. He asked why Gideon Ma's networking event was labeled Girls' Night. I felt my face flush. I said it was complicated, that Bryn had cancelled last minute, and Nina invited me to this instead. He asked why I didn't just tell him that. I said I didn't think it mattered. He said lying mattered. I felt anger rising, the kind that comes when you're caught and don't want to admit it. I said he was overreacting, that he was making something out of nothing. I said it was just networking. He asked why I felt the need to lie about networking. I said I didn't lie. I just didn't update him. He said that was the same thing. I told him he was being paranoid. I said he was acting controlling, tracking my social media, questioning every little detail. He said he wasn't tracking anything, that Nina had tagged me publicly, and it showed up in his feed. I said he was looking for reasons to be upset. He said he was looking for reasons to trust me. That hit harder than I wanted it to. I changed tactics. I said I'd gone because I needed space, because our marriage had become boring. I said he worked all the time, barely talked to me, slept in a different room. I said if he wanted me to be honest, he needed to give me something worth being honest about. He stood up slowly, picked up his tablet, and said he was done having this conversation. I asked where he was going. He said to bed. I asked which bed. He said the one in the guest room. I said that was exactly the problem. He said the problem started long before tonight. When the door to the guest room closed, I heard a lock click. I stood in the kitchen, shaking with frustration and something else I didn't want to name. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. I went to the bedroom and lay awake for hours. My phone sat on the nightstand, silent. I wanted to text Bryn, to vent, but I couldn't. She'd ask what happened, and I'd have to admit I'd lied. I couldn't text Nina because she'd probably just laugh and tell me to relax. Around 3 a.m, I heard that sound again. The printer in the guest room, quiet and mechanical. I wondered what Owen was printing at 3 a.m. I told myself it didn't matter. But deep down, I knew it did. The weekend passed in strained silence. Owen spoke to me only when necessary, and even then, his tone was careful, measured, like he was selecting each word with precision. I tried to apologize on Saturday morning, but he said he needed time to think. I asked how much time. He said he'd let me know. On Monday, I went to the school pickup line to get Ivy. I arrived a few minutes early and waited in the car. Other parents milled around, chatting. I saw Margot, Owen's mother, standing near the entrance. She saw me too. Her expression hardened. When Ivy ran to the car, she climbed into the back seat and asked why Daddy slept in the other room. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I said Daddy was just working late and didn't want to wake me up. Ivy said that didn't make sense because the guest room was right next to her room, and she could hear him typing all night. I said he was very busy. Ivy asked if we were fighting. I said no. Ivy said it felt like we were. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Margot watching us from the sidewalk. She didn't wave. She just stood there, arms crossed, until we drove away. That evening, I got another message from Gideon. He said he'd enjoyed seeing me at the mixer and asked if I'd be interested in attending another event the following weekend. This one was smaller, more intimate, just a few key people. He said it would be good for my career. I stared at the message. I knew I shouldn't go. I knew Owen was already suspicious. But something stubborn and defiant rose up in me. Why should I miss opportunities just because Owen was upset? Why should I shrink my life to make him comfortable? I told Gideon I'd think about it. He sent back a smiley face and said he hoped to see me there. The next day, I texted Bryn. I asked if we could meet for coffee. She agreed, and we met at a co-working space near her office. She looked tired, and I realized I'd been putting her in an uncomfortable position. Before I could say anything, she said Owen had called her. My stomach dropped. She said he'd asked if we'd really hung out on Friday. She told him the truth that we hadn't. I asked why she did that. She said because lying to him felt worse than disappointing me. I said she'd promised to cover for me. She said she didn't sign up to be part of whatever I was doing. I felt betrayed. I said she was supposed to be my friend. She said friends don't ask friends to lie to their spouses. I said it wasn't that serious. She said then why was I so desperate to hide it? I didn't have an answer for that. Bryn said Owen seemed calm on the phone, almost too calm. She said he'd thanked her for being honest and hung up. She said it scared her, the way he didn't sound angry. Just resolved. I brushed it off and said Owen was being dramatic. Bryn said I should probably talk to him before things got worse. I said things were fine. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me. At home that night, I found Owen in the kitchen. He was making dinner, moving through the motions mechanically. I tried to start a conversation, asked about his day. He said it was fine. I asked if he wanted to watch something together after Ivy went to bed. He said he had work to finish. I noticed a clipboard on the counter, face down. I asked what it was. He said just notes. I tried to flip it over, but he moved it away smoothly, saying it was drafts he wasn't ready to share. The word statement was visible at the top before he covered it. Later, when I went to the supermarket, I ran into Margot in the checkout lane. She was buying groceries, placing each item carefully on the belt. When she saw me, her face went cold. She said she'd seen a very interesting photo online. I felt my stomach tighten. She asked if Owen knew I was spending evenings with strange men. I stammered that it was a work event, just networking. She said it didn't look like work to her. She said she'd taught her son to keep receipts. I asked what that meant. She said Owen was smarter than I gave him credit for. Then she paid for her groceries and walked away without another word. I stood there, frozen, as the cashier scanned my items. When I got home, I saw Owen's car in the driveway. I carried the groceries inside and found him in the guest room. The door was slightly ajar. I knocked and asked if we could talk. He opened the door halfway. Behind him, I saw his desk covered in organized folders. He asked what I wanted to talk about. I said I'd run into his mother. He said he knew she'd texted him. I asked why he was turning his family against me. He said he wasn't turning anyone against me, that I was doing that on my own. I asked if he'd told Margot about the party. He said he didn't have to, that she followed Nina on social media. I said that wasn't fair. He said neither was lying. I tried to get closer to see what was on his desk, but he stepped into the doorway, blocking my view. He said he needed space. I said we were married, we shouldn't need space. He said maybe that was the problem. When he closed the door, I heard a lock click. I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the wood grain, trying to figure out when everything had shifted. That night, I got a second message from Gideon. He said the event was confirmed for Saturday and that he'd reserved a spot for me. He said I deserved a night where I felt appreciated. I read the message 3 times. Owen's words echoed in my head, but so did Gideon's. I typed back that I'd be there. Then I deleted the thread again. On Saturday, I told Owen I had a work thing. He asked what kind of work thing. I said a team dinner. He asked where. I gave him the name of a restaurant downtown, one I knew had private rooms. He wrote it down on a sticky note, just like before. I asked why he was writing it down. He said, just in case. I left the house around 6. This time, I didn't change at home. I brought the dress in a bag and changed in the car. When I arrived at the venue, a sleek lounge with low lighting and jazz playing softly, Nina was already there. She hugged me and said I looked amazing. I asked how many people were coming. She said maybe 10. I asked how many women. She shrugged and said, did it matter? Inside, it was the same ratio as before. Mostly men, a few women. Gideon greeted me with a hug that lasted a beat too long. He said he was glad I came back. He said some people couldn't handle the energy of these events, but he could tell I was different. I drank more than I should have. The conversations blurred together. Someone complimented my work. Someone else asked about my marriage. I said it was fine, stable. Gideon, standing nearby, raised his glass and said, "Here's to stability." Everyone laughed. Someone took a video. I didn't notice until later. I was in the background, laughing too loudly, my posture loose and unguarded. The video showed the timestamp, the location, everything. I left around 11 and took the metro home. The train car was mostly empty, except for an older woman sitting across from me. My makeup was smudged. My dress was wrinkled. I pulled out my phone and texted Owen that the work thing had run late. The woman across from me stared with obvious disapproval. I avoided her gaze and focused on my phone. Owen didn't reply. When I got home, Owen was awake. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his tablet again. I felt a rush of dread. I asked if he was waiting up for me. He said no, he was just working. Then he turned the tablet toward me. The video was playing. Me, in the background, laughing at Gideon's toast. The timestamp, the location, everything. I asked who sent him that. He said it didn't matter. I asked if he was tracking me. He said no, someone had sent it to him anonymously. I said that was creepy. He said what was creepy was lying about a work dinner to attend another party with the same man. I felt my defenses go up. I said he was obsessed, that he was looking for reasons to make me the villain. He said I was doing a pretty good job of that on my own. I said he was suffocating me. He said I was suffocating the truth. I screamed that he didn't understand what it was like to feel invisible, to spend years being someone's wife and someone's mother, and never just being myself. He said he understood perfectly, that he felt the same way. I said then, why was he punishing me for trying to feel alive? He said, because I was killing us in the process. That stopped me. I stood there, breathing hard, and he just looked at me with that same calm expression. Then he picked up his tablet and said he was going to bed. I asked which bed. He didn't answer. The next morning, Ivy had a school recital. We went as a family, but we didn't sit together. Owen sat with his mother on one side of the hall. I sat with my mother Darla on the other. When Ivy sang her solo, I saw Owen recording it on his phone, his face soft and proud. I wondered if he was recording me too. During intermission, Margot loudly told another parent that some women forgot what vows meant. Darla, sitting next to me, said Margot had always been judgmental. I asked if she thought I was doing something wrong. Darla said marriage required excitement, that I shouldn't apologize for being bold. I wanted to believe her. After the recital, Bryn cornered me in the hallway. She said she couldn't keep lying for me, that Owen deserved better. I begged her to stay quiet. She said she already told him the truth. I asked why she betrayed me. She said I betrayed him first. Then she walked away. I turned and saw Owen across the hall, phone in hand. He wasn't looking at me, but I had the distinct feeling he'd recorded the entire conversation. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went out to the parking garage at 1 a.m., looking for I don't know what. When I rounded the corner, I saw Owen sitting in his car. The dome light was on. He had a thick stack of papers spread across the passenger seat, organized into sections with colored tabs. He was highlighting lines, checking his phone, adding handwritten notes in the margins. I stood behind a concrete pillar and watched. He never looked up. He worked with the kind of focus I hadn't seen in years. When he finally closed the folder and turned off the light, I retreated to the elevator before he could see me. Back in the apartment, I lay in bed and tried to convince myself everything would blow over. But I couldn't shake the image of Owen in that car, surrounded by papers, building something I couldn't see. The next morning, his phone buzzed on the counter. A text preview appeared from an unknown number. Meeting confirmed. Bring the folder. I asked what that was. He said just something he needed to handle. I asked what kind of something. He said he'd tell me when it was time. I felt my pulse quicken. I said he was being secretive. He said I was being hypocritical. I asked what that meant. He said I'd figure it out. The tension in the house became unbearable. Owen stopped talking to me unless Ivy was in the room. When she wasn't, the silence was thick and heavy, like the air before a storm. I told myself he was being childish, that he'd eventually forgive me. But the calm way he moved through the house, the methodical way he organized his things, made me uneasy. At work, my manager called me into a conference room. My stomach dropped. She said someone had forwarded photos of me at external events. She asked if I'd represented the company at unofficial functions. I said they were personal. She said they didn't look personal. She said I needed to be more careful about how I presented myself, especially online. I left the meeting shaking. Nina stopped by my desk later and asked what happened. I said management was cracking down on social media. She rolled her eyes and said they needed to relax. I said, maybe we should be more careful. She said I was starting to sound like Owen. That stung more than it should have. That evening, I got another message from Gideon. He said he was hosting a VIP evening, very exclusive, just a few key people. He said it would be good for me to be there, that I was building a reputation in the right circles. I stared at the message, torn. Part of me knew I should decline. Part of me wanted to prove I could still do what I wanted. I told him I'd think about it. He said he hoped to see me there, that I brought good energy to these events. I told Owen I was visiting my mother that night. He asked if she was okay. I said yes, she just wanted company. He nodded and wrote it down. I asked why he kept writing things down. He said just keeping track. I said it was weird. He said so was lying. On Saturday evening, I drove to the event. This time, I felt more anxious than excited. When I walked in, Gideon greeted me warmly. He said he was glad I came despite everything. I asked what he meant by everything. He said he'd heard I was having trouble at home. I asked who told him that. He said people talk. I felt exposed. The party was smaller, more intimate. 8 people total, 3 women including Nina. The conversations were sharper, more personal. Someone asked about my husband. I said we were working through things. Someone else said marriage was hard. Gideon said marriage was optional. I drank too much again. The room spun slightly. Nina took photos. I said no photos. She said relax, it was just for memories. I said I didn't want any more photos online. She said fine and put her phone away. I didn't see her post the video later. I left around 2 a.m. The metro was nearly empty. I sat alone, my head pounding, and texted Owen that my mother needed me longer than expected. He didn't reply. When I got home, the lights were off. I thought Owen was asleep. I crept into the bedroom and froze. He wasn't there. I went to the guest room. The door was locked. I knocked softly. He asked who it was. I said it was me. He said he was working. I asked if I could come in. He said no. I stood in the hallway, listening to faint typing sounds. Then I heard it. The printer again. I wondered what he was printing at 2:30 in the morning. The next day, my father had a minor procedure at the hospital. My mother called and said the family should be there. I arrived in the early afternoon. Owen was already there with Ivy. So was Elliot, Owen's older brother. Margot was there too. In the cafeteria, the tension was obvious. Margot sat with Owen and Ivy. Darla sat with me. Elliot hovered between the groups, looking uncomfortable. At one point, he leaned down and said something to Owen. I couldn't hear it, but Owen nodded and said something back. Later, I overheard Elliot say, "The documents are ready whenever you say the word." My blood ran cold. I asked Owen what documents. He said Elliot was helping him with some paperwork. I asked what kind of paperwork. He said he'd tell me when it mattered. Margot spoke up then, loud enough for everyone to hear. She said Owen had been too patient, that I'd humiliated him long enough. Darla tried to defend me, saying marriages went through phases. Margot said phases didn't involve lying and secret parties. Darla said I was exploring my identity. Margot said I was destroying my family. The cafeteria went quiet. People at other tables turned to look. I felt my face burn. Owen stood up, took Ivy's hand, and said they were going to the vending machine. Ivy asked if Mommy was coming. Owen said Mommy needed to talk to Grandma. After they left, I confronted Margot. I said she had no right to interfere in my marriage. She said she had every right to protect her son. I said Owen was overreacting. She said I was underestimating him. I asked what that meant. She said I'd find out soon enough. That night, I came home late. Owen was in the kitchen. 2 mugs sat on opposite counters again. He asked if my mother was feeling better. I froze. I realized I'd told him I was visiting my mother the night before. Not tonight. I stammered that I meant my father, that I'd been at the hospital. He asked why I'd lied about visiting my mother yesterday. I said I hadn't lied, that I'd gotten confused. He picked up his phone and showed me a screenshot, a text I'd sent him yesterday. Visiting Mum tonight, she needs company. Below it was another screenshot from Nina's Instagram story, a video of me at Gideon's party, time-stamped 2 hours after I'd sent the text. I tried to explain. I said I'd stopped by the party on the way to my mother's. He asked why I'd lied. I said I didn't lie. I just didn't give him every detail. He said that was the definition of lying. I said he was twisting things. He said I was deflecting. I asked why he was collecting evidence like I was a criminal. He said because I was treating our marriage like it was disposable. I said he was the one who started sleeping in the guest room. He said I was the one who started lying. I tried to touch his arm. He stepped back. I asked if he still loved me. He said he loved the person I used to be. I asked what that meant. He said I'd changed, and not for the better. I said he'd changed too. He said at least he was honest about it. Later that night, I found an envelope on the kitchen table. It was unsealed. Inside was a printed copy of my text thread with Gideon, messages I thought I'd deleted. Underneath was a handwritten note in Owen's careful script. I know everything. We'll talk properly soon. I felt my hand shake. I called him. He didn't answer. I went to the guest room and knocked. He said he was busy. I said we needed to talk now. He said he'd talk when he was ready. I said I deserved to know what he was planning. He said I'd find out when it mattered. I heard a faint beep, the sound of a recording app stopping. Then the lock clicked again. The next few days passed in a fog. I barely slept. Every time I saw Owen, he was calm, focused, moving through the house like he was following a checklist only he could see. He took Ivy to school every morning. He picked her up every afternoon. He told me he'd cleared it with the school. I asked why. He said it made sense. Ivy started asking questions. She asked why Daddy was taking her to school now. I said Daddy had more time. She asked if we were getting divorced. I said no. She asked why it felt like we were. I didn't have an answer. At work, I avoided Nina. She'd posted another photo from Gideon's last party, and even though I wasn't tagged, I was visible in the background. Someone in HR had seen it. I overheard my manager talking to another supervisor about professionalism and boundaries. I knew it was about me. One afternoon, Bryn texted me. She said we needed to talk. I said I didn't want to talk. She said too bad we were meeting. I agreed, mostly because I didn't have the energy to argue. We met at the same co-working space. She looked exhausted. She said Owen had called her again. I asked what he wanted this time. She said he'd asked for a written statement about what I'd told her, about the lies I'd asked her to cover. I asked if she'd given it to him. She said yes. I asked why she was helping him destroy me. She said I destroyed myself. I said she was supposed to be my friend. She said friends don't let friends ruin their lives. I said I wasn't ruining anything, that I was just living. She said lying wasn't living, it was hiding. I said she didn't understand. She said I didn't want her to understand. I wanted her to enable me. She stood up to leave. I grabbed her arm and begged her not to do this. She pulled away and said she already had. She said Owen deserved honesty, and if I wouldn't give it to him, someone had to. Then she walked out. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call Owen and confess everything. Part of me wanted to double down, to prove I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't do either. I just sat there, paralyzed. That evening, Owen was waiting for me in the kitchen. He had a USB drive in his hand. He said it contained everything: screenshots, messages, photos, timestamps, witness statements. He said he'd made copies. He said if anything happened to the original, there were backups. I asked why he was doing this. He said because I'd left him no choice. I said he could choose to forgive me. He said forgiveness required accountability, and I hadn't shown any. I said I was trying. He said trying meant stopping, and I hadn't stopped. He told me he'd opened a separate bank account. He said household expenses would go through there, and I'd have access, but he was tracking everything now. I said that was controlling. He said it was necessary. I asked what gave him the right. He said the law did. I felt my throat tighten. I asked if he'd talked to a lawyer. He didn't answer directly. He said he'd talked to people who knew what to do. I realized Elliot had been involved from the beginning. Owen said he was taking primary responsibility for Ivy's schedule. I said she was my daughter too. He said then I should act like it. I asked what that meant. He said it meant showing up. It meant being honest. It meant putting her first instead of chasing validation from strangers. That hit me hard. I said I wasn't chasing validation. He said then, what was I doing? I didn't have an answer. He said he needed me to understand something. He said he wasn't angry anymore. He said anger required energy, and he didn't have any left. He said he was just done. I asked what he meant by done. He said I'd find out soon. Later that night, I found Owen in the parking garage again. It was almost midnight. He was transferring boxes to his car. I asked if he was leaving. He said not yet, just preparing. I asked for what. He said I'd see soon. I asked if he was taking Ivy. He said he'd never take her away from me, but he would protect her from the chaos I was creating. I said I wasn't creating chaos. He said then, why did everything feel like it was falling apart? I watched him load the last box into the trunk. It was labeled household, but clearly contained more than bills. He closed the trunk and looked at me. He said he'd loved me for 9 years. He said he'd tried to build a life with me. He said he'd given me every chance to be honest. He said I'd wasted them all. I started to cry. I said I didn't mean for things to go this far. He said intentions didn't matter, actions did. I said I could fix it. He said it was too late for that. He got into his car and drove away. I stood in the parking garage alone, wondering where he was going at midnight with boxes full of evidence. The next day, I received a calendar invitation from an unknown sender. It was for March 28th at 11 in the morning, at a place called Riverside Brunch Patio. I didn't recognize it. I asked Owen if he sent it. He said not directly. I asked what that meant. He said I'd find out. I tried to decline the invitation. The option was grayed out. It was marked required attendee. I felt a chill run down my spine. That night, I tried one last time to fix things. I put on something Owen used to like. I knocked on the guest room door. He opened it but didn't let me in. I said I wanted to talk. He said we'd talked enough. I tried to touch him. He stepped back. I said I missed him. He said he missed the person I used to be. I asked if he still loved me. He said he loved the idea of who I was. He said he didn't know who I'd become. I said I was still me. He said then, maybe I was never who he thought I was. I asked if there was any chance. He said there was always a chance, but it required honesty. I said I'd be honest. He said it was too late for that. I asked when it had become too late. He said the moment I lied the first time. He closed the door. I heard that faint beep again, the recording app stopping. Then the lock clicked. I stood in the hallway, trembling. I realized I'd lost him, not in a dramatic, explosive way, but quietly, methodically, one lie at a time. And now he was building something I couldn't stop, something I couldn't see, something that would change everything. And I had no idea what was coming. The days leading up to March 28th felt surreal. Owen moved through the house like a ghost, present but untouchable. He spoke to Ivy with warmth and patience. He spoke to me with polite distance, the way you'd talk to a stranger at a bus stop. Every interaction felt rehearsed, measured, final. I tried to ask him about the calendar invitation. He said he'd explain everything soon. I said I wanted to know now. He said I'd know when it mattered. I said I deserved answers. He said I'd had chances to give answers, and I'd chosen lies instead. One morning, I came into the kitchen to find Owen sitting at the table with a folder open in front of him. The pages were color-coded, organized into sections with tabs. I asked what it was. He closed it before I could see. He said it was just paperwork. I asked what kind of paperwork. He said the kind that mattered. I tried to look closer, but he stood up and took the folder with him. He said he was going out. I asked where. He said to handle things. I asked what things. He said things I should have handled honestly. Then he left. That afternoon, my mother called. She said she'd heard from Margot that things were bad. I said Margot was exaggerating. Darla said Margot seemed serious, that she'd mentioned lawyers. I said there were no lawyers, that Owen was just being dramatic. Darla said I should probably prepare, just in case. I asked prepare for what? She said whatever came next. I hung up feeling more anxious than before. I tried calling Bryn. She didn't answer. I tried calling Nina. She answered, but said she couldn't talk, that work was getting intense. I asked if it had to do with me. She said maybe that management was asking questions about external events. She said she had to go. I felt isolated. Everyone was pulling away. Even Ivy seemed distant. When I tucked her in that night, she asked if Daddy was still going to live with us. I said of course. She said it didn't feel like it. I asked why. She said because he slept in a different room and didn't look at me the way he used to. I told her everything was fine. She said grown-ups always said that, even when it wasn't true. That night, I heard Owen on the phone in the guest room. His voice was low and steady. I pressed my ear to the door and caught fragments. Yes, confirmed for the 28th. All documents ready. Witnesses confirmed. My pulse raced. I knocked on the door. He stopped talking. He opened it and asked what I needed. I asked who he was talking to. He said someone who could help. I asked help with what? He said with making sure everything was handled properly. I asked what properly meant. He said it meant legally. I asked if he was divorcing me. He said I'd know soon. I said I deserved to know now. He said I'd lost the right to demand anything when I chose deception over honesty. He closed the door again. I heard the lock. Then I heard him resume the call. I stood there, shaking, trying to piece together what was happening. The next morning, Owen told me he'd be taking Ivy to school and picking her up for the foreseeable future. I said I could do it. He said he preferred to handle it. I said she was my daughter, too. He said then I should have thought about that before prioritizing parties over parenting. I said that wasn't fair. He said fair was irrelevant. What mattered was stability. And right now, I wasn't stable. I asked if he was taking her away from me. He said no, but he was making sure she had consistency. I asked what that meant. He said it meant knowing at least one parent could be trusted. That cut deep. I said I could be trusted. He said evidence suggested otherwise. I asked what evidence. He gestured vaguely and said all of it. Every lie, every party, every deleted message. He said it was all documented. I asked why he was documenting everything like I was a criminal. He said because I was treating our marriage like it was a crime scene, and he needed proof of what really happened. On March 27th, the day before the calendar event, I tried one more time. I found Owen in the guest room and asked him to tell me what was going to happen. He said I'd find out tomorrow. I said I couldn't wait until tomorrow. He said I'd have to. I asked if he still cared about me at all. He paused, then said he cared about doing the right thing. I asked if the right thing included humiliating me. He said he wasn't humiliating me. I'd humiliated myself. He said he was just making sure the truth was visible. I asked what truth. He said the one I'd been hiding. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying conversations, trying to figure out what Owen had planned. A divorce announcement? A public confrontation? I didn't know, but the calm way he'd moved through the last few weeks terrified me more than any argument ever had. Around 3 a.m, I heard that sound again. The printer, then footsteps, then the faint beep of a recording app stopping, then silence. I got up and crept to the guest room door. It was locked, as always. But underneath, I saw a sliver of light. He was still awake, still preparing, still building whatever it was he'd been building. I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling until dawn. March 28th, I arrived at my birthday brunch, planned by Owen. Guests stared, Mom confused. At 11, Owen entered with Ivy and a process server. You've been served. Envelope. Divorce petition. Temporary custody. Him primary, me supervised. Frozen assets. Evidence appendix. Screenshots, GPS, statements. Why public? You like audiences. He documented everything for months. Margot, you did this. Elliot, get counsel. Ivy cried, are we still family? Owen, in 2 houses. Whisper, consequences aren't cruelty, they're clarity. He left with Ivy. Guests fled. Mom paid the bill. Owen cut my access. Home, USB of full case. Color-coded schedule. Note, restoration, not revenge. Alone, evidence spread. I saw his precision versus my lies. Lost husband, daughter's trust, self. Too late, everything gone. 300 words.